Hello, today is Tuesday, April 25th, 2023. I'm Tony Mangino from TC2, and this is Staying Connected. Engaging with supplier account teams is always an interesting exercise and one that is constantly evolving. Economic pressures, including inflation, interest rate hikes, and talk of a looming recession, is having a material impact on how supplier account teams are reacting to various sourcing activities we've been supporting our customers with. It's critical for enterprise customers to be armed with the latest intel on how to effectively engage with supplier account teams to maximize opportunities to drive value on existing network services spend, as well as transformational activities. Today, I'm joined by Larry York. Larry's an executive director here at TC2. His practice covers a range of strategy and sourcing activities, including RFPs, rate reviews, directed negotiations, and just about everything in between. On today's podcast, we're going to discuss what we're seeing on the front lines across a range of technologies and sourcing activities. Larry, thanks for joining me again for another episode of Staying Connected.
Very glad to be here today with you, Tony.
So, Larry, what are some of the key trends you're observing in your recent supplier negotiations?
It's a great point. Where to begin? I've noticed an interesting dichotomy where suppliers are aggressively pursuing initiatives to reduce their own cost while actively preventing customers from doing the same. This plays out in several different ways. First off, in directed negotiations and even RFPs, we're seeing suppliers leading with self-service models. While this is not necessarily something altogether new, suppliers are now pushing for things like actual circuit provisioning and disconnections to be initiated by the customer through online portals. This has everything to do with supplier efforts to reduce internal staffing and account cost. While the drive to reduce cost and increase efficiency through automation, AI, and new tool sets is the right approach, the actual application of these measures can lead to expensive headaches for a customer. Further, you should be wary of custom solutions that are typically constructed around teams of bodies from the supplier that come at an exorbitant cost. In complex managed service deals, I've observed that the SIs do a better job of delivering on technologies that drive efficiencies and cost reductions than do the legacy telcos.
That's really interesting, Larry. What can you advise a customer who is really disciplined about their sourcing programs?
Well, first off, regularly going to market in some kind of competitive context is absolutely critical, as is utilizing any contractually available rate reviews. The key is institutionalizing the concept of change within your organization, and that your strategic suppliers to drive value. Regular RFPs and rate reviews are a great practice, but just because you execute these activities, it doesn't keep deals competitive by themselves. Consistent procurement activity not supported with any change of business can lead to supplier complacency. That is to say, incumbents get comfortable and non-incumbents become unwilling to move the market to win new business, which ultimately is a problem for the customer. Remember, you don't have to 100% move all your business in competitive procurements, but savvy customers will carefully evaluate opportunities to move something to drive cost savings and positively impact supplier behavior.
Yeah, Larry, a constant refrain that I hear from my customers is the time it takes to get anything done with their supplier account teams. What's your experience on that front?
Yeah, Tony, for sure. My experience is much the same. It's old news, but plan, and plan. Again, for procurement timing. Building inventories for procurement activities is a critical step to the project. However, if you're relying on suppliers for inventory details, be aware it's going to be a long wait. And once you've communicated your requirements and positioned the ask, expecting suppliers to provide a response to your request in the time frame allotted is a grave miscalculation. Expect suppliers to request an extension at each and every pass. I've seen account teams recently providing responses to simple rate reviews in 2 months when it should take no longer than 2 to 3 weeks.
Wait. So you think that's an intentional strategy or a result of, diminished account support?
Well, it's a bit of both. For sure, the suppliers will do everything they can to delay the write-down on their revenue. But the lack of expert resources at all levels of the supplier support team leads to exaggerated lead times for responses, difficulty in scheduling meetings, and getting approvals from supplier executive review boards. Then once an offer is delivered, the customer has to conduct detailed reconciliations of the supplier response in order to quantify the true value of the offer.
Larry, so what kind of trends are you seeing in the current deals you're working?
I always like to talk about this notion of supplier entitlement. Think this has been bad in the past. Wait until your next negotiation. The give to get mentality has taken on a whole new meaning. There's an expectation from the account team that any revenue write down on existing service needs to be offset with new business in the form of mobility, managed security services, cloud, internet, whatever. In RFPs, I've noticed incumbent reluctance to comply with new or customer friendly terms. The rationale for this behavior has been that's not how we do things at this customer. Why would we change now? I'm also seeing a shift or renewed effort from most all of the tier one incumbent providers to push the benefit of any proposed cost reductions out past the existing term of an agreement. In the context of rate reviews, suppliers want to exclude services with minimum circuit or service terms. The landscape of commercial terms is also shifting. I've seen renewed efforts to move customers away from term revenue commitments back to annual commitments or towards term revenue commitments with unacceptably high revenue thresholds. Similarly, suppliers are moving to severely limit back-end transition periods and the frequency and effectiveness of contractual rate reviews. On a positive note, customers are making meaningful headway on things like payment periods.
Interesting feedback. What do you think the impact of inflation is having on the marketplace for ICT services?
That's an excellent point, Tony. Inflationary increases in manpower and hardware costs are a reality across the industry. Suppliers are responding by slowing the rate of cost reductions, even in the most competitive sourcing events. I'm also continuing to see global supply chain lead times for hardware, which creates cash flow issues for customers and further delays transformational initiatives. Also, foreign exchange market volatility, along with escalating interest rates, is adding pressure to supplier balance sheets.
Okay, so let's do a quick survey of what you're seeing on the front lines of the deals you're working. Let's start with the corporate WAN.
Well, traditional WAN services continue to exhibit downward pricing pressure. Aggressive MPLS pricing continues to close the gap to DIA as legacy providers fight to halt or at least delay transport underlay transformations. Next, larger bandwidth ports, say greater than 1,500 megabit per second, though not access, continue to be priced aggressively. Also, suppliers are pricing down their own service elements and concentrating reductions on in-footprint locations. And last, deals involving technology transformation and or some managed service component attract compelling price points.
Some good insights there for sure. How about in the mobility space?
Yeah, the mobility space, we see rate plan pricing and other key deal provisions are still negotiable. Verizon won't waive its economic adjustment charge. However, other TCO reducing credits and waivers can be negotiated as an offset. Most enterprise customers don't need 5G capable devices yet, so sweat the assets. Out of contract rates should be lower than when devices are being subsidized, but if you don't ask, you won't get it. And T-Mobile is a viable competitor to AT&T and Verizon, injecting much needed competition in those engagements.
It's always good to have more competition for sure, particularly in the mobility space. So how about the crowd favorite service level agreements or SLAs?
Yes, the old SLAs. As you're well aware, SLA negotiations can be quite difficult in the best of times. Stringent and enforceable SLAs with meaningful credits can introduce an uncomfortable level of risk dollars into a deal. You have to pay close attention to the details of the calculation, any exclusions, and measurement periods. SLAs that require custom measurement and reporting are being pushed back on hard as they typically are manual, which equals resource cost for the suppliers.
Okay, thanks, Larry, for sharing your recent experiences in the trenches negotiating on behalf of TC2's enterprise customers. Certainly a lot to keep tabs on. You can reach out to me, Larry, or any of our colleagues at TC2 or LB3 to discuss how to maximize your next ICT negotiation. Finally, you can stay up to date by subscribing to Staying Connected, by checking out our websites, and by following us on LinkedIn.